This story begins at Angel University. One of the students is a pretty girl in a skirt named Sanchu. She calls someone an idiot for coming to pick her up. The person who came to pick her up is her brother-in-law, Kingy. Leaving the car, she says she feels embarrassed that he came to get her. And as she walks to the vehicle, she calls him useless and throws her bag at his legs. Kemi grabs the bag and she opens the car door. Sitan asks him to hurry up because she doesn't want any of her classmates to see them together. She tells her brother-in-law that he shouldn't pick her up at the entrance of the university again because it embarrasses her. She even comments that she doesn't understand how her sister ended up marrying someone like him. While driving, Kin is very nervous, his hands trembling as he grips the steering wheel tightly. At the end of the day, they arrive at the Chu family residence, a large mansion. Inside the house, Mrs. Chu is praising a young man named Minal, who mentions that he studied abroad. She comments that Kenan should have married him and not Kingy. Minal asks about Kenan, saying he hasn't seen her yet, and Mrs. Chu replies that she's working and hasn't returned yet. He then asks about Kenan's husband and comments that he heard he is unemployed because he can't speak. Mrs. Chu explains that Kinley went to pick up her youngest daughter. The mother-in-law asks Kinley to come downstairs to greet the guests, saying he shouldn't lock himself in the room. Kiney grabs the girl but doesn't speak to anyone, heading straight to his room. At this moment, Sit calls out, asking if he's deaf because he didn't hear his mother calling him. While complaining about her brother-in-law, she asks if he thinks the house is his, and begins entering his room. He is in his underwear, meditating and emitting a large amount of energy as if it were a kind of fire. The girl, embarrassed, tells him to get dressed, calling him a pervert. But Kimmy pays her no attention as the energy is flowing within him. The meditation provides him with more energy that he absorbs from the plants and other things around him. He slowly opens his eyes to see what's happening and observes a large vortex of energy. This is a technique he has trained for 10 years, and part of his training required him to remain silent to focus. After a decade of silence, Kinley finally manages to control the large sphere of energy in his hand. He reflects a little on his past, remembering that it has been a year since he became part of the Chu family but hasn't spoken a word yet. When he tries to speak, his jaw feels stiff. He warms up his voice a bit, as if something in his throat is loosening. Proud of having achieved what he wanted for so long, he feels he doesn't need to suffer anymore and can speak again. Suddenly, his thoughts are interrupted by a loud scream ordering him to come downstairs quickly. His mother-in-law continues calling until Kin gets dressed and goes down to the hall. The plant that received his energy starts showing something strange. Almost dead, it quickly blossoms and comes to life, displaying new leaves. When Kin goes to the hall, his mother-in-law asks herself aloud if, besides being mute, he's also deaf. There, he comes face to face with his wife's old friend, who was also her suitor. This friend introduces himself as Minao. Seeing Kinley, he shows a malicious expression as if plotting something. Kinley remains silent and greets Minao. However, when shaking his hand, Minal begins to mock him, saying that besides being a fool, Kai also needs his wife to speak for him. The former suitor continues, saying that Kimmy only married because of his wife's family fortune. With eyes full of anger and malice, he claims that Kimmy doesn't deserve Keenan and offers a large sum of money for him to leave. Upon saying this, Min Minal is suddenly hit by intense pain, which makes him jump in fear and show a horrified expression. Kimmy was squeezing his hand so hard that he almost broke his fingers. With a calm expression, Kim asks what's going on and introduces himself as Kin. His mother-in-law and sister-in-law are very surprised because it's the first time he has spoken in 10 years. They ask if he really said something. His wife's friend Min becomes very nervous and asks if Kimmy can speak, pretending ignorance. Kimmy asks how he's not ashamed of lying to his wife for so many years, while continuing to squeeze his hand. His mother-in-law, very nervous, begs him to let go, saying he's hurting the other man. Kin's sister-in-law is extremely scared by the whole situation. At that moment, Sitan's phone rings, and she looks at the screen with concern. When she answers, she receives shocking news that leaves her frightened. The police want to arrest her sister and are at the company where Kenan works. Kaney hears this, approaches the phone, grabs the sister-in-law's hand, and asks what happened to Kenan. his wife. The sister-in-law replies that something happened with her sister and that the police plan to take her. Determined to intervene, Kenny turns with confidence, but his mother-in-law shouts for him to return to the room and not embarrass them further. Min, with his hand very sore, asks what happened to Kenny. The lady begins to explain that something went wrong at the company and that the police surrounded the place. Very nervous and in pain, Min says he has some friends in the police and suggests that he and the lady should go to her daughter's company to understand what's going on. At the company, a very angry woman with pustules on her face is saying that the owner of the company will be arrested. Kenan, Kenny's wife, maintains a firm posture while listening to the woman speak. The woman complains to Kenan about using a cream that, according to her, caused the eruptions on her skin. Win also mentions that he has many friends in the police station, including the chief of police, a personal colleague. The woman scorns Min and comments that she knows the police director and that her cousin is the city mayor. Everyone is shocked by this information because someone so influential could complicate the situation greatly. Very frightened, shows his cowardice, saying he can't do anything and blaming Kenan's company for the problem. Someone is heard calling for the mayor's family, and it's Kenny who asks for 10 minutes to try to help. With great confidence, he says that if he manages to cure the woman and restore her skin to its original state in just 10 minutes, she should leave them alone. Kenan is very surprised because it's the first time she's seen her husband speak in a long time. Very jealous of Kin's confidence in contrast to his own cowardice, Min becomes even more nervous and states that Kaini is a disgrace to the family. Chu, Kaini's wife, asks what he's doing, saying she's tired of the situation and doesn't want him to cause more problems for her company. Kame turns to his wife and reassures her, saying that now things are different and that he must fulfill his role as a husband occasionally. Min, still green with envy, starts mocking Kinny. Kingy announces in front of everyone that he has the cure for the mayor's niece's skin problems. The company employees start mocking Kinley, saying he's just an opportunist who married into a wealthy family, and wondering how someone so ridiculous got involved with their boss. The woman complaining asks why she should believe him. Kenny responds that if he fails to cure her, he will take all the consequences. She agrees to test the treatment but warns that she will be relentless if it doesn't work. Kaine's wife asks him to stop, because this could cause more problems. Kaine holds her hand to convey confidence and asks her to find some traditional Chinese medicine herbs. He also explains that the woman's high internal temperature might be causing the problem and that perhaps the treatment will work. Despite her doubts, his wife decides to fetch what her husband requested. Min starts cursing, saying that Kinley will get into big trouble because of this. The protagonist turns to Min and says that if he manages to cure her, he will take responsibility himself, which makes Min even more indignant, feeling belittled. By Kenny's husband, the owner of the company returns with all the requested items but warns that if something goes wrong, the Chu family will not get involved, especially in anything related to the family's son-in-law. Even so, Kimi takes the ingredients. Moy uses his power to heat the water with energy and prepares the mixture. He is no longer the mute man from before, as he now speaks and demonstrates the ability to do many things. With a satisfied expression, Kin announces that the balm is ready. He approaches the girl with a smile on his face and asks if he can apply the solution to the eruptions to try to improve them. The problem is that the mixture has a grotesque appearance, provoking laughter among the employees. The mayor's niece, suspicious but determined, pinches her nose and begins to apply the solution to her face, although only in a small amount. Kinley, smiling, rushes to apply more of the mixture, which visibly irritates the girl. She runs to the bathroom as if she is about to vomit. Mim and other employees begin mocking Kinney, calling him crazy. Meanwhile, his wife still harbors doubts, wondering if it will actually work. Suddenly, a scream is heard from the women's bathroom. Everyone pays attention, and when the girl comes out, her face is completely clean, as if by a miracle. There is no sign of eruptions, and her skin is smooth. Those who underestimated Kin are left speechless, unable to believe what they are seeing. Kaine explains that the problem was not the product, but the woman's internal body temperature, which only needed anti-inflammatory and antipyretic treatment for the wounds to disappear. The employees are still incredulous, surprised that someone so underestimated managed to cure the condition. His wife, astonished, asks how he did it. The mayor's niece mentions that her uncle has a very serious illness and offers to pay Kimmy $500,000 if he can cure him. Kimmy accepts without hesitation, leaving his wife shocked. She says he's crazy to take on such responsibility and shouldn't treat sick people since he's not a doctor. With a smile on his face, Kinya reassures her, saying there's nothing to worry about. Even so, Kenan remains concerned and warns him that her family will not help him if he causes someone's death in the process. Realizing that even his wife doesn't believe in his abilities, Quim lowers his head and begins to leave the place. His wife impatiently calls his name again. He takes a deep breath and promises that if something goes wrong, he will handle the problem himself and not cause further trouble for the Chu family. At nightfall, they arrive at the hospital in the city of Jiangshen, where Liu, the mayor, is talking to the doctor. The doctor informs him that his father's condition is critical and that surgery would be very risky. The mayor's niece, standing next to Kinley, becomes alarmed when she sees her uncle already in the hospital. Leo explains that his father's condition worsened that morning and the doctor said there's nothing more to be done. His cousin, very impressed, introduces Kinley as a specialist in Chinese medicine, suggesting that perhaps he can help. The cousin, skeptical, asks if Kimmy is really a doctor, to which Kimmy responds affirmatively. Still suspicious, Leo asks if Kimmy can show his diploma. Kimley admits that he doesn't have a degree, which horrifies the cousin. He starts arguing, stating he would never allow someone without a title to treat his father, leaving the family members shocked. The niece, devastated upon hearing this, asks Kimmy to leave. At that moment, a nurse appears at the door, shouting that the patient's vital signs are very weak and that everyone should go immediately to the room. Alarmed, they all rush to the patient's room. Lan fears losing her father and asks the doctor what is happening. The doctor responds that he tried everything. Her cousin continues to insist that Lin allow the protagonist to help, but Leo replies that he would never let someone without a medical license treat his father. The machine shows that the patient's vital signs are getting weaker. Kin claims he can save him but needs to act immediately. Without wasting time, Lin shouts at him to get out of there. Kinley then proposes a bet to Mayor Liu, but the latter retorts that he's not interested and asks what he could possibly gain by betting with someone like him. The bet is simple. If Kim saves the patient, he only wants an apology. Otherwise, he will go to jail. Both cousins demand that Kimmy leave the room, accusing him of being crazy for saying such things. Kimmy assures them they will regret it. Leaving the room, he sees his wife in the corridor, who immediately scolds him, saying he's acting like a fool. With a serious expression, she continues, saying he should go home and stop embarrassing himself. The sound of the electrocardiogram machine catches Kinley's attention, as the patient's vital signs weaken further. Leo asks what is happening to his father, but even the doctors cannot understand. The doctor orders the nurse to run and fetch a pacemaker, as the machine indicates the father's heart has stopped. The doctor states there's nothing more to be done. With sadness, he expresses his condolences. Leo, incredulous, kneels by his father, crying and lamenting that he didn't take better care of him or spend more time with him. Suddenly, the door bursts open, grabbing everyone's attention. Kaini enters, determined to save the patient, and asks everyone to step aside, affirming there's still a chance to save him. He pulls out several thin needles from his coat. 10 years ago, these techniques were taught to Kim by an immortal being. He begins to touch the dead man's chest, emanating intense energy to use the technique. Now it makes sense why he remained silent for 10 years. Everything led to this moment. Kin starts inserting the energy-charged needles into the patient's chest. Before inserting the last one, he reflects that the 10 years of patience paid off. Upon inserting the last needle into the patient's neck, something surprising happened. The man began to bleed, but came back to life. The entire family celebrated with relief as the patient woke up. The incredulous doctor asked how Kimmy had managed to achieve such a feat. Kimmy stated that he had saved the patient just in time. The elderly man, still weak, apologized to his niece for worrying her. Kimmy, with a smile, turned to leave, leaving the family in the room. Just as he was about to exit, he heard the man kneeling and calling his name. Turning back, he saw the mayor admitting he had been a man of little faith and should have trusted him earlier. Despite everything, Kimmy had saved his father. Kimmy reassured Liu, saying her father would soon be stable and recovering. The girl also apologized and promised to transfer the promised $500,000, asking him to send the account number. As he closed the door and left the room, Kimmy once again heard his wife's voice, this time sarcastically calling him Wonderful Dr. Kin. He hadn't noticed she was there and started looking at her. Slowly, his wife began to understand what was happening. She commented that it was just a coincidence and that Kimmy should never attempt something like that again. He asked what kind of image she had of him, implying it must be a poor one. Min, Keeney's former suitor, watched everything in nervous silence, realizing that Kimmy was doing well. The couple returned home late at night. Keeney's mother asked her daughter how she was, if she was still scared, and what had happened. Keeney observed the conversation between the two as Kenan replied that everything was fine now and that it was over. The mother-in-law, surprised by her daughter's calm tone, turned to Kaimi and began yelling, sarcastically ordering him to clean the house. He agreed. After finishing the housework, Kimmy returned to the bedroom and was surprised to find his wife wearing only a nightgown, stretching in poses inspired by a TV class. He realized Kenan seemed to be practicing yoga. While stretching, she commented that she heard from her sister that he had behaved like a pervert that day. Kim explained that after picking her sister up from university, he was changing in his room when she accidentally opened the door and saw him. As Kimmy watched Keeney stretch in the thin nightgown, she adjusted the fabric near her chest, capturing his attention. Keeney continued, saying she knew her sister's temperament and believed he hadn't done anything to bother her. She also advised him to be less impulsive and thanked him for everything that went right that day, something rare to hear. Before finishing, she warned him that the next day they would have a family meeting and had to attend the dinner. At dawn, the facade of a luxurious building called the Royal Hotel appeared. Inside the hotel, at the restaurant, Kenan's entire family gathered for the first annual Chu family reunion. They greeted each other one by one. Kenan's father, Kineen, was delighted to welcome everyone. Kenan's aunt, elegantly dressed, began speaking disdainfully, asking when Kenan would have a child. She replied that they were not ready yet and shouldn't rush. The aunt commented that having children while young was a good thing, simultaneously taking a jab by saying that, unlike some people, her son-in-law didn't need to be financially supported by his wife. Mrs. Chu smiled and commented that her son-in-law was no ordinary man and that she was very happy because he had a government job. Meanwhile, Kimi continued savoring the banquet at the table. The aunt lightly coughed to draw attention, and Shen, another son-in-law, stood up to make a speech. He thanked the opportunity to be at the reunion and presented a gift for the uncle, a beautiful red box containing a piece of porcelain from the Yan dynasty, purchased for $30,000. Kanan's father was impressed with the gift, considering it extremely valuable. However, Kimmy felt an ominous energy emanating from the piece and suspected it might be cursed. While Kanan's in-laws praised Shen's generosity, Kimmy could barely hide his unease. Shen seized the moment to ridicule Kimmy, suggesting he should have prepared an equally grand gift. He then provocatively mentioned that Kimmy was unemployed and financially dependent on his wife. This made his wife nervous, and she said no one could speak to her husband that way. Shen continued mocking Kimmy, who stood up and explained that he was in a hurry and couldn't bring anything. Shen was surprised to hear Kimmy speak, and Shen's wife commented that even when he spoke, he was still useless and incapable of doing anything. With his usual wit, Kimmy responded that regardless of what he brought, it would be more valuable than something fake. Tension filled the room, and the aunt began cursing. Shen confidently claimed he had spent a lot of money on the piece. Kimmy countered that no matter how much he spent, the piece was still a forgery. Shen, visibly nervous, slammed the table, spilling his glass, while thinking about how anyone could have discovered this, as the seller had guaranteed the porcelain's authenticity. Challenged, Kimmy offered to prove the piece was fake. The father-in-law asked him to remain silent, and his wife scolded him, saying he was being rude since everyone there was family. The aunt kept provoking Kimmy, claiming he had made a baseless accusation. Kimmy asked if Shen would admit the porcelain was a replica, but his wife intervened, saying it didn't matter since it was a gesture of gratitude and the family dinner shouldn't end in a fight. Suddenly, the door opened, and the mayor entered the room, asking what exactly was fake. He was accompanied by femme male. Shen was surprised by the mayor's presence and approached to greet him. The mayor raised his hand as if to shake Shen's, but ignored him and greeted Kimmy enthusiastically, showing himself happy and grateful to see him. He commented that he hadn't expected to find him there. They were merely discussing the authenticity of a porcelain piece. The mayor, upon receiving the item, calls the expert accompanying him to evaluate it. The evaluator, a specialist in blue and white ceramics, examines the object thoroughly. After a meticulous analysis, he states that the design and colors appear to be from the Wan dynasty, which relieves Shounen, who spent a fortune on the piece. However, he asks if the evaluator believes it to be original or just a copy. Kingy, noticing the hesitation, questions whether the object is truly fake. The evaluator laughs, gives him a friendly pat on the shoulder, and says he understands why the mayor likes him so much. He explains that the piece is indeed a forgery. Despite looking authentic from afar, it lacks the elegance and sophistication of an original item. Furthermore, he mentions that the porcelain had been buried with someone, absorbing a lot of negative energy, which made it cursed. Kinley's mother-in-law, desperate, asks her husband to wash his hands immediately, while the aunt scolds Shinen, who apologizes, saying he didn't know. The evaluator praises the quality of the imitation, but emphasizes that an experienced eye can spot the forgery. He invites the mayor for tea, closing the matter. Before leaving, the mayor calls Kami a guest of honor and mentions he has something important to discuss with him. Kemi informs his wife's family that they should continue the dinner, promising to return as soon as he finishes his meeting with the mayor. The aunt, changing her tone, comments that Kinley is truly a good match, while the mother-in-law smiles but chooses to remain silent to keep up appearances. Kim continues the conversation with the mayor, who mentions that his father, since returning home, has been ill again in recent months, and his wife and son have also fallen sick. Upon hearing this, Kimi focuses his energy and asks to examine the mayor's pulse. The mayor extends his hand, and as expected, a malignant energy is dissipated by Kim's energy. The mayor asks what he is feeling, but Kim reassures him, saying he knows exactly what to do and will go to the mayor's house after dinner to resolve this once and for all. The mayor feels relieved to hear this and says he will wait for him all day. At the end of the meeting, Kim accompanies his father-in-law to the car and tells his wife and sister-in-law to go ahead with him, as he needs to leave. Upon hearing this, his wife responds rudely. Everyone leaves in the car, and Kim picks up his phone, setting the GPS to trace the route to the mayor's house, which is nearby. He turns right onto a busy street and follows an alley he needs to take to reach the destination. The GPS voice indicates only 50 meters remain, but on the way, Min and several armed henchmen await him. Kim observes the alley and notices the impressive number of henchmen posted there, blocking the path with weapons in hand. Min, the former suitor of his wife, appears with a mocking tone, saying the only way for Kim to leave is by letting them cut off his hands. Calmly and clearly, Kim asks if he is talking to Min. The man, with a malicious expression and threatening gaze, responds that Kim doesn't need to worry because they will handle everything. To motivate his men, Min shouts he will pay 50,000 to whoever cuts off Kim's hands. With the shout, the armed henchmen rush to attack him. With a confident smile, Kim focuses his energy, and a powerful aura begins to surround him. He delivers devastating blows, taking down the first henchman with a single kick. Then, he turns to another, striking hard in the stomach and knocking him to the ground. His movements are swift and precise as he continues to defeat his opponents one by one. After some time, showing no signs of fatigue, Kim asks if that was all. Min's face is distorted in shock. He cannot believe what he is seeing. How could someone once considered useless now be so strong? Panicked, Min tries to process what happened. Kim makes a provocative gesture, inviting him to fight, but Min chooses another option. He starts running for his life, shouting for Kim not to come near him. With everything resolved, Kim breathes and continues on his way to the mayor's house, which is in the same direction as the alley. The henchmen are defeated, lying unconscious on the ground. As the day ends and the sunset paints the sky, Kim finally reaches the mayor's house, a grand mansion. He rings the doorbell and waits a moment before being received. Upon entering, Kim feels an extremely negative energy emanating from the place. When the mayor opens the door, although he appears happy, his deep, dark circles reveal his exhaustion. The mayor invites him in, but Kim notices the energy in the house is incredibly dense, much worse than he could have imagined. Suddenly, a loud scream echoes from inside the house. The two men run down the hallway, and the mayor opens a door, worried about his wife. He asks if his son Zia is getting worse again. While the mayor helps his terrified wife, Kim observes the boy Zia floating in the air, his eyes completely fixed on the malignant energy emitting a sound similar to a rattlesnake. The energy is so intense that it takes on a corporeal form. The mayor is terrified but tries to reassure them, vowing to save the boy. The monster, noticing Kim's power, begins to stir. Its eyes shine with rage, and the entity starts speaking through the boy, warning, not confronting it and leaving it alone, repeating the same phrase macabrely. But Kin, full of determination, prepares to act. With a quick movement, he throws several acupuncture needles charged with energy that hit not the boy, but the center of the evil energy. It emits a white flash when struck and begins to dissipate. The mayor and his wife are worried about their son, who falls onto the bed very tired. Kin tells them not to approach because the energy is still inside the boy's body, and he needs to remove it to purify him. The mayor and his wife start to get very nervous and, influenced by the energy, begin to insult each other. The wife calls Kin garbage, and the mayor tells everyone to be quiet when he realizes they too are contaminated by the energy. Kin makes a small puncture in his thumb, concentrates all his energy, and places a needle on the boy's forehead. The boy begins to scream as a dark energy starts to rise into the air, taking on a very strange form. We can see it is pure dark energy. Kin's energy passes through the boy's body, which begins to float again as two energies come into play. One enters and purifies, while the other exits, the evil energy accumulating above the bed. Kin charges 3 needles with energy and throws them at the black mass to disperse it. He tells the mayor not to worry anymore, and that now he just needs to find the source of this sinister aura. However, the mayor does not fully understand what he means by aura. Kin starts investigating the room, asking if anything recent happened to the family, or if they received any gifts. Realizing there is nothing in the room emitting this energy, he concludes that the source must be at the front of the house. He heads to the front of the house with the mayor following. Upon reaching the main door, Kin sees that inside a statue, there is a small stone charged with evil energy. He takes the stone from the statue and shows it to the mayor, saying that this is the source of all the problems. However, the mayor does not believe that a simple little stone can affect them this way. Kin explains that the stone's evil aura always comes into contact with them as they enter and leave the house. The more contact they have with this evil energy, the more contaminated they become, growing increasingly irritable and weak. The mayor's wife thanks Kin for saving the child and apologizes for what she said earlier about him. Kin doesn't mind. He only wants the child to be well. The mayor is very pleased and says he will ask the driver to take Kin home. But first, he surprises Kin with a proposal. Would he like to open a clinic? Kin begins to think about how opening a medical clinic could be. The mayor says he wants to repay the favor since Kin saved several members of his family. Kin thanks the mayor and starts heading toward the car, very happy with the idea. During the journey home, night begins to fall, and Kin thinks that with a clinic he could help many more people. If his parents could see what he is doing now, they would be very proud of him. As he walks through the city center, Kin observes the streetlights, and something catches his attention so much that he shouts for the driver to stop the car. The request is so sudden that the driver brakes abruptly. and someone ends up hitting their face on the front seat. A little irritated, the driver asks if they have arrived at their destination. Kin turns around and sees his wife, but doesn't understand what she is doing there so late. He hides, observing what she is doing, which catches the driver's attention. The driver notices that the young man is looking at a woman and comments that she is very beautiful. We then see another woman in high heels wearing a very tight leather outfit that attracts the attention of several people. This person is Kin's best friend, and perhaps the young man is exaggerating by thinking she might be doing something wrong. Kin and his friend finally meet, and the red-haired woman apologizes for being late. As she approaches, they kiss passionately. After kissing her, Kin feels very embarrassed, but the red-haired woman doesn't notice. Kin's jaw drops as he sees what is happening, and the driver is very surprised. He cannot understand the situation. His wife is flirting with another woman. With the lights illuminating the two of them, we see them walking to a nearby club. The driver, smiling, says the young man has good taste, but Kin replies that it is not what he thinks. He notices his wife's friend making a very strange gesture over her shoulder toward him as they enter the place. As soon as they enter, they ask for their favorite wine and say how much they missed each other. While the bartender prepares some drinks, they sit at the counter. Kin comments that he is having a lot of trouble at work and therefore hasn't been able to see his friend. His friend says not to think about bad things now and just have fun. They decide to get drunk and enjoy themselves together, toasting with big smiles on their faces. After some time, they have already opened several bottles and continue drinking. The friend says that if she didn't need a fake marriage, she wouldn't be under so much pressure. Kenny already seems to be feeling sick from drinking so much. His friend feels bad about what's happening and offers him a special drink. He drinks it all without asking, but his friend doesn't take another. She just watches. As soon as he finishes drinking, he faints, and his friend lifts him onto her shoulders. Both stand up and begin to leave the counter, heading toward a staircase. They climb with great difficulty to the second floor of the building. When they get there, they are greeted by Min, who is still obsessed with Kenny. He is in a very large room. He lifts the girl and takes her to a red bed with a camera pointed at it. While her friend watches everything, he places Kenny on the bed with a very malicious look and says he is not responsible for what he does. Meanwhile, the other girl leaves the room and locks the door of the room where Kenny remains unconscious on the bed. Min begins touching her clothes and body. A small whisper can be heard from the back of the room. As Min approaches Kenny, there are suddenly 3 knocks on the door, catching Min's attention. Nervously, he asks who is at the door. The person responds that it's room service. Min thinks it might be a drink that the girl with Kenny ordered to prevent anything from happening, but upon opening the door, he sees a figure that suddenly enters and surprises him. Min can't believe who it is, while the other girl is already unconscious by the door. He starts making excuses, saying that Kenny was drunk and that he was going to help her, but before he can finish explaining, the person throws him forcefully against the wall. The impact is so strong that Min feels intense chest pain and begins to bleed. The intruder, with a dark voice, asks Min how he wants to die. Min begins begging for his life, kneeling before the man, saying he will never appear in their lives again. He pleads for forgiveness and even calls him merciful master. The man tells Min he can stand up and disappear. Grateful, the criminal walks past the man with a fake smile on his face. But something is odd. Suddenly, Min says the man should go to hell and pulls out a knife, trying to stab him in the back. However, the man dodges the attack and says that he has already given Min 2 chances and that there will be no more. The man pulls out a needle, charges it with energy, and delivers a precise strike to Min's hip, right in the area where it feels like 2 eggs are cracking. He scolds his opponent, saying he brought this upon himself. Min falls to the ground, writhing and foaming in pain. Both conspirators against Kenny are expelled from the room. The man closes the door and says he feels relieved to have found his wife. With a worried expression, he begins preparing a needle and sits beside his wife. He makes a small puncture in her wrist and starts transferring energy. Kenny's eyes begin to open slowly. Her husband asks if she's awake and how she feels. The girl starts to respond, but notices that someone tampered with her clothes and wonders where she is. She dresses herself again and slaps the man, calling him a pervert. Stunned, the man says he only saved her and doesn't understand why she hit him. But Kenny doesn't believe he saved her. She thinks he was doing something wrong. She doesn't believe anything and continues calling him a pervert, saying she doesn't trust him. The man, with nothing left to say, gets up, defeated, and says it's up to her whether she believes him or not. As he closes the door, she continues cursing and throwing objects at it. The man feels terrible about the situation and starts looking around the room. Then, a video camera catches his attention. He realizes there's a camera on a tripod that had been recording the entire time. The man goes to a park near a forest and receives a call on his cell phone. The caller wants to know if the phone belongs to him. He recognizes the voice as Ling Onan, the girl whose pimples were cured with his ointment. She asks why she's calling. The girl says she wants to buy a large quantity of the ointment and that it would be even better if he could improve it by adding something to make the skin lighter. The man gets very excited about the idea of selling it and wants to know how many bottles she wants so he can prepare them. Ling Onan says she wants about 200 bottles and will make a big deposit. The man says he can do it without any problems and that it's not as expensive as she might think. The girl says she heard from her cousin that they opened a medical clinic and that she will sponsor it. The man gets very happy and thanks her. At the Chu family house, the clock strikes 1 in the morning, and Kenny is scared because she is waiting for her husband to return. She finds it strange that he's so late. Her husband must be very angry because she misunderstood the situation. But then she hears the door open. They meet in the living room and stay silent for a minute. He starts heading to the bedroom, and she asks why. That he arrived so late worried his wife, leaving her surprised. Hesitating to respond, he says he had work, and she immediately asks him to forget about it and pretends she didn't ask anything. Noticing how nervous she is, he observes her, waiting for her to say something. Kingen begins to talk about what happened today and what she did, asking what went wrong for her to have to drink so much. Feeling very sad, she says she will probably be fired from the company where she works. Kenny starts explaining the situation, saying that Linga and her co-workers often talk about her with everyone. One of the managers had several conversations with her, and in one of them he told her she should quit. King tries to comfort her, saying that even if she gets fired, everything will be fine, but Kenny can't understand how everything will be fine without her job or how she will support the family. After all, it's not easy to find a new job. As she walks to sit down, King tries to clarify what he meant and reminds her of how, in the hospital, her husband saved the mayor's father. To show his gratitude, the mayor offered him a clinic. He had already earned some money taking care of people, and if she is willing, the two of them could manage the clinic together. He says this while holding a cup of tea. King Jin is surprised to hear this and by how her husband presents the idea. The man continues, saying it will take some time to open the clinic and that he is going to sleep. He then starts climbing the stairs to the bedroom. Kin is grateful for the comforting words and, to tell the truth, also wants to apologize to her husband. The next morning, at Chu's house, the doorbell rings constantly, and a voice calls out loudly for Kinin. A girl is in front of the house, shouting for someone to open the door. Kin is still very tired from the night before and hasn't even taken off his pajamas. By the voice, he can already imagine who is on the other side of the door. He opens it, knowing who it must be, and sees a girl with short hair and sunglasses who is precious stones. Either you double your money or lose it all. This very luxurious room is where the auction takes place, with a very chic atmosphere and several drinks, served by beautiful waitresses. As they begin heading to the auction site, a colleague provokes Kinley to buy a precious stone for his wife. The boy responds that if she likes one, he will buy the next one. The item being auctioned next is a raw jade stone. The two girls are very excited about what is happening, but Kinley is a bit bored. Something catches his attention from afar. He can see that in the display area there is a stone charged with energy and emanating a very strong aura. As he approaches, he doesn't notice that the energy resonates with the energy within his body, and he moves to pick up the stone. The auction announcements continue. 100,000 once, 100,000 twice, and the price changes as the bidding increases. King Jin hears from his colleague that if she wants any stone, her husband will buy it. Tannen says that if she's lying, he'll kill her. But her friend asks her to calm down and wonders where Kinley is because she already misses him. After all, he was on her side. Kinley wants to buy the stone that is charged with energy and asks for its price. The girl responds that it's about 50 per stone. He begins to check his pockets and finds several crumpled bills and some coins. He gives the girl several crumpled $10 bills and some coins to add up to the total amount, and asks for help cutting the stone. While the girl says he is embarrassing them with those things, the girl who went to cut the stone for Kinley is very surprised and shouts, announcing that the stone is full of jade inside. Despite its outer appearance, it is very valuable on the inside, but she says it so loudly that it attracts the attention of the entire room. Everyone turns to look at the stone. The people there begin to approach to take a look. Others admire the stone and take pictures of it, excited about the idea of finding more like these. Everyone starts picking up the stones that had been marked for disposal. Meanwhile, people want to buy Kinley's stone. A girl offers 300,000, but a man offers 500,000. Then someone offers to buy the stone for 5 million. A man with glasses starts saying that the stone is worth at least 5 million and that he is the Jade King of Yang City, known as Tan Lao. With much excitement on his face, Lao asks if the boy would like to sell the stone for 5 million. This man is the father of Shijin, a friend of Qin Jin, who says he bought the stone for his wife and that they should ask her if she would like to sell it. His colleague is also very surprised by the value of this stone. Qin Yin admires her husband's gesture and thinks a bit better about their situation, saying that a specialist would know better how to store the precious stone and that it's an honor to meet her friend's father. Tan Lao is happy to buy the stone and says he will ask his secretary to send a check later. He also asks Kinley to examine a stone he just bought that looked very beautiful and full of jade. The boy says that, unfortunately, that stone is just an ordinary rock and that there's nothing special about it. No one can believe him, not even his wife, who questions how he can say something like that because it was a stone selected by someone with a lot of experience. Tan Lao says that although it has some jade embedded in the crust, it needs to be examined inside to be sure. His daughter Xin begins mocking Kinley, saying he had beginner's luck the first time. When the stone is opened, it can be seen that there is no jade inside, so it has no value. They demand acknowledgement that her father never makes mistakes, but the Jade King remains unshaken. Kinley says that Kinley is right and that they are still looking for people with a lot of experience in the jade area in case he is interested. Kinley begins to speak, but Tan Lao interrupts and says that he does not need the answer now, that he can make the decision later. Tan Lao and the daughter begin to leave, and when asked by his father if he is sure about this, he says that of course, he is sure. After some time, already on the street, Kinley and his wife return home in the car. Qin Yin is still incredulous, asking since when he understands geology. The man hands her the check with the amount from the sale, and says that it is not very difficult, that he learned from books and can teach her. Then the girl slaps the check, asking if he was lying because he pretended to be mute and a loser. Kinley begins to think about the response, recalling a distant past. An image of an old man scratching his beard begins to appear. This old man gets up and prepares to say something. The old man has such strong energy that it seems to burn with a blue aura around him. He says the following words: that as long as the teachings in the book are practiced, the boy is 10 years ahead of his time, but he will need to block all his knowledge for 10 years. This is the boy's destiny, and the rest depends on him. After saying this, the man begins to disappear and says they will meet again in the future. This story is told by Kinley, who says that he is not lying and that he is not stupid. Qin Qin does not quite understand and asks why he chose to marry her. The boy asks if she does not remember what happened in the past during university when other students mocked Kinley by putting cigarette butts in his food and throwing soup in his face. With a quick movement, someone stops the cigarette butt that was going to be thrown into Kinley's plate. The young man is defended by Kennen, who says that people should not mess with the weaker ones. She can remember this story and how they met. This ended up making Kinley fall in love with her. When he proposed to her after university, he was very happy, but now he is sad, remembering that their marriage is just a facade. The wife asks if he never felt resentment or regret towards her. He confidently replies that he could not have understood anything since her family helped him when he needed it, and the woman also helped him. Deep down in his heart, he always saw her as his wife. Her cheeks begin to blush because opening his heart was not easy. Ching Jin feels good, but does not know how to handle the situation since her husband has changed a lot recently. Although they like each other, they have a somewhat complicated marriage and cannot declare themselves to one another. Kinley continues, saying that his clinic should open tomorrow and that his wife should accompany him. She says she thought it was all a joke, but apparently, he is serious about saving lives. It is not an easy job as he thinks. He says he is not treating any serious diseases, just more common things, and that she should not worry too much. Angrily, Cannon says that if he goes to jail, no one will bail him out. The husband feels very sad about her response and distrust. The silence bothers her, but she only said it because she is worried about her husband. In a beautiful shopping center where the clinic's inauguration takes place, many people gather in front of the new clinic, wishing them good luck with some festive balloons. Some people begin to see what treatments are offered, and Kinley's wife's entire family, who was at the dinner, is also present at the inauguration. One of the aunts begins to speak poorly of the boy, saying she did not know he had become a doctor. The man beside her agrees, saying that the clinic opened out of nowhere. Kennon's father says there should be no concerns because his son-in-law is a man with many secrets, and even helped the mayor recently. Chen Hen begins to talk about Kinley, saying that he should not feel secure just because he is friends with the mayor, as they are targeting him for opening a clinic. Kinley responds sarcastically, saying he does not understand how a clinic can be dangerous to people. The husband of her cousin continues, saying the place will undergo a strict inspection as he works at City Hall. Finally, Mayor Liu and his wife arrive at the place and are very happy to see Kinley. Kennon's uncles are very surprised to see that the mayor has so much sympathy for the boy. Chen Hen still cannot believe it because the mayor is his boss. Looking at the way the mayor treats Kinley, one cannot understand the relationship between the two. Kinley receives gifts from the mayor and his wife. Then she adds that the place is beautiful. Chin Yin becomes extremely angry because the entire family was speaking sarcastically about her husband, and now that the mayor has arrived, everyone is silent. Outside, some cries for help can be heard. Someone asks them to save their child. Everyone is curious to know what is happening and why people are shouting. Outside, a worried father can be seen with a child while the people around him try to understand what is going on. Someone tells them to step back because he is a doctor and can help the child. He begins approaching the child, who is drooling excessively. The child is foaming at the mouth while coughing and asks his father for help. Some members of Kinley's family say they need to take the person to the hospital, claiming that he won't be able to cure him since the child already has a severe illness. The aunt and her brother-in-law can only expect the worst, saying they want to see how he will get out of this. The desperate father asks someone to help him, and the doctor begins to examine if the child has any reactions and asks for him to be taken inside the clinic. Everyone attentively observes Kinley's work, placing the child on a stretcher to try to cure him. Sitting next to the child, the boy begins to concentrate all his energy and touches the child's wrist to transfer it. The energy manages to penetrate deeply into the child's body, passing through all his blood until it reaches his vital organs. The child's stomach is extremely damaged. The doctor says the child is poisoned and asks what he has been fed lately. The father says it's not possible that he was poisoned, as the neighbor takes care of the child and has always been good to him. A woman starts shouting, saying that the father is incompetent and shouldn't leave his children with neighbors. This causes the sick child's father to break into tears, crying and saying that his wife died young and that he has been saving money for his son's education. However, the doctor can tell by the symptoms, the weak breathing, and the child's skin color turning black, that it is definitely poisoning. A voice in the crowd incites everyone, saying that the doctor at this clinic only got his diploma a few days ago, and how dare he open a clinic like this. Everyone is incredulous upon learning that he graduated recently and wants to know if all of this could just be a setup. The people around demand the clinic be shut down and the child taken to the hospital. His sister-in-law and cousin enjoy watching the child and the doctor struggle, but his wife is very nervous about the whole situation happening there. The sick child's father begins to grow very nervous, stands up and shouts that if the doctor can't cure him, then he's only trying to harm him. Kin gets angry with the situation and puts an end to the argument, saying the child's condition is critical and there's no time to waste. During the argument, the child begins to bleed, showing that his condition is worsening and his life is at risk. Kinley's eyes open wide with surprise and determination, and he asks everyone to step away. He removes the sheet from the child while the sick child's father continues to console him. Their names resonate: Sunan, Moon, Sangji, Taiji, Wagai, Bai Tainu. When it ends, the child's mouth begins to fill as it releases everything that poisoned his body. He gets up and vomits profusely, soiling his clothes, and lies back down where he was. The father can barely believe his son has begun to move again. With tears in his eyes, he hugs the child and apologizes. The sick child says he is very hungry and now wants to eat some fried pork. The father, still hugging the child and crying, says it's fine, they can go eat now. Kin says everything is fine with the child, but if the father still has doubts, he can go to the hospital for a general checkup. Very grateful, with hands clasped and still in tears, the father thanks Kin Lee, saying he is a true doctor. Everyone is astonished by the young Lee's ability to save the child, and despite being a recent graduate, he has great skills. We can see the old man who began raising doubts about the doctor walking toward a boy who is hitting the wall in anger and grinding his teeth. It's Mino. The old man tells Mino not to worry and to let him live a little longer because he will soon make a mistake. Night falls, and a man leaves the clinic happily saying that he will now be able to have a child with his wife. The clinic's lights turn off and the door closes. Who is exhausted and begins to leave through the back door, going to close everything and head home, but hears a whisper from the trees. Something very strange in the back of the clinic. With a careful look, he realizes that something is strange in the garden. A boot and a knife completely covered in blood at the base of a tree, which causes him great fear. But who is there is a woman, also covered in blood and with her clothes all torn, seeming to be very injured. She says nothing and just keeps looking at Kin, who tries to ask if by any chance she is there to see the doctor. As soon as he finishes his question, the woman begins to advance toward him with great speed, seeming like she's going to attack him. He puts his hands in front of him, trying to prevent a blow, and asks the girl to stop because he is the doctor there. But the woman, halfway through, begins to stagger and falls to the ground in front of Kin. He can see additional bruises on her body. Seeing the girl's situation, he cannot leave her there and starts preparing to work even more. Then he takes the girl to the clinic and places her on a stretcher to begin treatment. After the girl is on the stretcher, still unconscious, he takes his phone out of his pocket and starts dialing a number. He is calling the Chu residence, but the phone rings for a while without anyone answering until Keenan picks up on the other side of the line. The doctor begins to explain that he has a very difficult patient lying in his bed. The wife asks if her husband won't be coming home today and if he will stay at the clinic. He responds yes, that he will sleep at the clinic because there is still much work to do and that she doesn't need to wait for him to arrive. Chin gets a little frustrated with this because she wanted to see her husband that day, yelling at him over the phone that, if he wants, he can work all day and live in the clinic for the rest of his life. Worried about his wife's reaction, the man thinks that next time he will have to buy something to try to please her. Focusing again on the injured girl, he opens his medical toolbox and begins to work. The woman has many gunshot wounds, so he cuts her clothes and pendant with scissors. Noticing the symbol on the necklace hanging from her neck, it looks like a military identification tag. He sees that she belongs to the 19th division of an elite group. How did that person end up in his clinic? Within the Chinese government and military, there are various special operations divisions. The M16 is made up of people specialized in stealing information. Some are hackers who are experts in weapons and reverse engineering, and others simply secretly influence public opinion. But the M19 is the most special. This is the girl who was injured on the clinic stretcher. She is the leader of a special forces team and orders her subordinates to advance on the mission. They are on the top of a building, illuminated only by the city's nightlights, jumping to the ground to begin their special mission. A voice echoes in the girl's head, telling her to remember that the 19th Division must be exterminated. The order came from above. This memory leaves her in a state of shock. Knowing she could die, she begins to fall toward the ground and cannot contain a scream. It's not heard. It's just the girl waking up on the stretcher. Her wounds are already bandaged, and she sees that she is out of danger. People can't believe that she's not dead and is still alive. Kinley was preparing some solutions and sees that she has finally woken up. The girl asks if he was the one who saved her, while he pours the solution onto a piece of paper. He responds that if she had arrived a few minutes later, he wouldn't have been able to do anything. The girl is still trembling in pain from her wounds and can barely get out of bed. But it requires great strength, and the pain is intense. He calmly asks where she is going while wrapping some packages. The girl, walking with great difficulty, says she has no home and doesn't know where to go. Upon hearing the girl's response, Kin reflects on what she said and then suggests that she stay there and that he needs a new assistant. The girl is surprised by the doctor's help. He opens the window to let the daylight illuminate the room. The girl asks if she can do it, and he says yes, that every month he will pay her an average of 5,000, and asks what she thinks of these terms. Perplexed by the doctor's help, she says she will do her best to help him and that if there is anything the man needs, she will do it for him. The doctor says she needs to stay at the clinic to recover, but a very loud scream comes from the front, asking Kinley to open the door. He heads toward the clinic and begins to open the door slowly, but the door is pushed with such force that it hits his face. And a girl who calls Kin enters. This girl is Heejin, and she asks the man to accompany her. The doctor asks if she is really there because it's too early to go there. Zin responds that he is the one who looks sick, saying that she went there to take them to a jewelry competition. She sees the tickets in Zihin's hand and takes them, but doesn't understand what competition it is about. She tells him to shut up and accompany her. Both head to the Grand Yang Palace, the palace of gambling. Upon arrival, Zihin sees her father and pulls Kin by the tie. Zihin's father is very happy to see him. The two greet each other enthusiastically, and despite being anxious, he draws a smile and apologizes for having kept Mr. Tan waiting for so long. Mr. Tan says it's no problem. After all, he wants the boys' help with the jade stone competition. Mr. Tan confirms this, saying he saw the boys' skill with his own eyes and wants his help. He continues explaining that this competition is divided into two parts. One is the bet, where you buy a stone, and the other is cutting the stone to find out what's inside. In the palace, other employees of Mr. Tan are also present. Mr. Tan confirms that if he helps win the competition, he will share 10% of the shares of his company called Tanki. Scene blackmails the man, saying that since she is his wife's best friend, she could invent a lie about him. Fearful, Kin says he will try his best. They start heading toward the central screen of the palace, where there are advertisements for the stones being sold. One of the boys asks with a bit of disdain if the young man is really going to choose that ordinary stone. With a smile on his face, Kin responds that since he is there, he would like to try his luck. Mr. Tan's senior employee, Loso, gives the young man a gold card and says that since he is in a good mood, he will give him one to try something. Kin accepts it but is a little suspicious because Mr. Tan said he could and says that since he is in a good mood, he will give him one so that he can try something. Kinley accepts it, but he is a bit suspicious because Mr. Tan said he might spend millions. The employees mock and laugh at the novice, saying that one is enough and that he should not insist further. They turn away and say that the boy cannot help it, that he is not ready to choose stones along with the other employees. Kin looks at the gold card and laughs, imagining the possibilities. The sun continues to illuminate the beautiful palace where they are. The young man begins searching among the cheapest stones, several of which are priced exactly at 1,000. Among these stones, one truly catches his attention because it has a blue glow. He turns around to see it better. The stone costs 2,000, but it is emitting a lot of energy and is probably very valuable, which draws Kin's attention. The girl asks him in a courteous but curious tone if he is thinking of buying something. But Kinley's attention is briefly diverted toward the other appraisers, most of whom had already acquired large stones. They exuded confidence as if victory was within their grasp. Nevertheless, the girl caught his attention again with a nod. He handed her a business card, explaining that he had sufficient funds to cover his expenses, and she accepted it with a grateful smile. As masses of assistants approached, animated conversations ensued. Despite expectations, it was evident that they considered the event an opportunity for both camaraderie and competition. One participant even offered a friendly suggestion, advising that perhaps Kinley should withdraw before it was too late. But Kinley remained firm. "I make my own decisions," he said confidently. With that, he proceeded to buy the stone that had caught his interest, eager to discover what it concealed. The intrigue grew when Mr. Tan himself approached, asking if the participants had made their final selections. The men confidently responded that they had chosen the best stone this time, securing a spot in the top 3. Mr. Tan seemed pleased, but the tension in the room was palpable. Suddenly, the atmosphere thickened when a man, accompanied by a dazzling woman, entered the scene. He was the champion of the previous event and wasted no time mocking Mr. Tan, making it clear that a fierce rivalry existed between them, with the Tan family seemingly at a disadvantage in this dispute. The tension mounted, and a brief confrontation ensued, which was quickly diffused. The champion then turned his attention to Kinley, looking at him with disdain. "So, Mr. Tan is eager to recruit the first man he sees for his team, huh?" he said with sarcasm, clearly aiming to provoke a reaction. Behind him, a group of men in elegant suits and sunglasses watched, having made significant purchases and ready to compete for the title. Despite a brief attempt by one of Mr. Tan's associates to calm the situation, the champion's presence cast a shadow of doubt in the air as the auction competition drew to a close. Mr. Tan approached Kinley again and, in a low voice filled with expectation, asked, "What is the status of your stone?" Kinley presented a small, discreet stone in a case, which prompted laughter from Mr. Tan's team. The laughter spread as Mr. Tan's face darkened with visible displeasure, thinking that Kinley had wasted his investment. However, the presenter called for calm, unexpectedly highlighting the discovery as something truly exquisite. This provoked skeptical glances among the crowd. The stakes were already high, with the total value of the event nearing 160 million as the final stages began. Kinley observed the reactions around him. Some seemed discouraged, especially Lauso, who had spent the astonishing amount of 723 million on what appeared to be a promising piece of rock. However, upon revealing the stone, it turned out to be a complete disappointment, leaving Mr. Tan's team visibly upset. The presenter's voice hinted at a touch of sarcasm as she pointed out that Mr. Tan's performance had been mediocre this time. Nevertheless, she added with a glimmer of hope that there was still one stone attributed to him, meaning a final chance to redeem himself. As expectations diminished, Mr. Tan watched as they began cutting Kinley's stone. At first, it didn't seem remarkable, but as they cut deeper, something notable emerged. An imperial green emerald. The room was astonished by the revelation that such an unassuming stone contained something so valuable. It seemed that Kinley's stone had not been a waste of money, to the surprise of the other evaluators who couldn't comprehend how such a small investment had surpassed their hefty wagers. Mr. Tan, who had been losing hope, suddenly wondered if he should have fully trusted Kinley from the start. His thoughts were interrupted when Kinley moved on to his next discovery. Without warning, Mr. Tan rushed toward him, shouting for him to stop, but it was too late. Kinley had already cut his second stone, revealing something even more extraordinary. A statuette made of rare red jade. The crowd froze in astonishment, immediately realizing the value and rarity of the find. The delighted presenter explained to everyone that it was a unique piece of jade formed over more than 1,000 years. Even those without expertise could recognize that Kinley had just revealed something of immense value. The atmosphere shifted drastically as attendees began placing bets. The numbers skyrocketed. 90 million, then 100 million, and climbing even higher. A guest, observing in awe, commented that such a find happened only once in a lifetime. Beside him was his elderly grandfather, coughing into a blood-stained handkerchief, his eyes fixed on the rare piece, unable to look away. Kinley remained serene amidst the chaos, his earlier doubts dispelled by the excitement of the discovery, knowing that today he had emerged as the unexpected champion. The word "sold" echoed through the auction hall, reverberating with excitement. Mr. Tan celebrated as the jade piece was successfully sold for the astonishing sum of 2 billion, earning him the title of Champion of the Day. Kinley and Mr. Tan stepped onto the stage, receiving the presenter's congratulations and surrounded by a standing ovation. "Today's event is undoubtedly one for the history books," the presenter remarked. Mr. Tan turned to Kinley, bowing in gratitude. "Without you, my company would have faced failure," offered the total sale price of the jade piece, an impressive sum of 2 billion. "What?" exclaimed King Lee, barely believing what he was hearing. Mr. Tan's daughter intervened, insisting he could not reject such an offer. "From today, you are declared the most honored guest in our home," she added with a smile, her eyes sparkling. "Thanks to you, our status has risen, and news of our achievements will spread across all provinces." Their pleasant exchange was suddenly interrupted by a group of men, redirecting King Lee's attention. They informed him that the person responsible for organizing the competition wished to meet him, extending an official invitation. Intrigued rather than intimidated, King Lee accepted. It wasn't long before he found himself seated in the back of a luxurious car, pondering the meaning of the Heian family's invitation. The driver announced their arrival, and as King Lee stepped out, he was greeted by the sight of a magnificent mansion. The abundant security measures emphasized the gravity of the occasion. As he entered, his interest in the grandiose decor grew. One of the attendants knocked on a door to announce his arrival. The door opened, revealing the same young man he had admired for his attire at the auction. He was welcomed enthusiastically and invited into the room. An elderly man sat in a wheelchair, his grandson smiling with excitement. The young man praised King Lee for making a significant impression at that day's competition, though King Lee sensed an undercurrent of something deeper. Still smiling, the house's owner clarified that he had a favor to ask. He wanted to know why King Lee had decided to cut such a remarkable emerald. "How did you know there was a nugget of jade inside?" King Lee returned the smile, savoring the moment, and said that when he held the stone, he felt there was something special about it. "Sometimes you just know when to take a risk." His words hung in the air, hinting at the intuition that had guided him throughout the day's events. A blend of instinct and experience that had led to his moment of unexpected fortune. He perceived that the elderly man had more to him than met the eye, a depth of history and wisdom that intrigued King Lee, making him reflect on what lay beneath the surface. They exchanged meaningful glances, and the elder expressed his desire to locate the jade, suggesting that King Lee's help would be invaluable. As King Lee turned his gaze toward the elder, he noticed a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. This prompted the man to ask about King Lee's prolonged look. Hesitant at first, King Lee admitted that he perceived an underlying issue that might not be immediately obvious. The elder acknowledged his uncertainty about making a full recovery, citing his advanced age and the severity of his illness. But King Lee offered his help, placing a hand gently on the elder's wrist to take his pulse. He was startled to sense a significant presence of deeply rooted negative energy. "There's something more here than just age," King Lee murmured softly. After some time, using certain techniques he had learned, the elder began to feel a noticeable improvement. Both he and his grandson were surprised. However, King Lee warned that this relief was temporary and that they needed to identify the root cause of the illness. The grandson, noting his grandfather's reluctance to leave the house, recalled some recent gifts they had received. With a concerned tone, he mentioned a jade stand they had acquired. King Lee's expression shifted. He explained that jade can store energy, especially if it has been disturbed or originates from a cemetery. Pausing, he observed the elder's face change from curiosity to alarm. King Lee elaborated that prolonged exposure to such an object could pose health risks. With a heavy sigh, the elder confessed that he often felt the chill of the grave at night. The grandson's eyes widened as he realized that the jade stand was likely the cause of his grandfather's illness. King Lee nodded, saying that while he couldn't guarantee a permanent solution, he could help. Still, he explained that he had initially come seeking the family's expertise in stones, particularly jade. Given the current circumstances, his quest seemed trivial. The family, perceiving his sincerity, insisted that they owed him a favor for his help. The elder assured King Lee that he could ask for anything, and his requests would be fulfilled. King Lee expressed his gratitude, saying that helping others was his purpose. However, he mentioned one specific request. The young heir nodded, ready to fulfill it. King Lee pulled a photograph from his pocket and showed it to him. It featured him alongside his parents, both smiling. He explained that his parents had disappeared a decade ago, and that he felt a strong desire to uncover their fate. The Heian family heir studied the image carefully, determination written on his face, and promised to do everything possible to help. Acknowledging the considerable time that had passed and the challenges they might face, he reassured King Lee that they would uncover the truth. With that commitment, King Lee felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing he wasn't just helping the Heian family, but also taking steps to solve the mystery that had haunted him for years. He also advanced toward the truth about his own past. He warned that finding the relevant information could be difficult, but he accepted the challenge with gratitude, directing his attention to the search for the jade. He declared that he was ready to delve into the matter immediately. Mr. K handed a business card to King Lee, expressing that it was a small gesture from the depths of his heart and soul, with a total value of 200 million. This amount was only an initial offer, with the promise of a significant increase upon finding the stone. The agreement was sealed, highlighting Mr. Hyam's concern for his family's declining prestige and viewing Kinley as his potential savior. The next day, the narrative shifted to Kin Lee's office. As he opened the door, a gentleman approached, mentioning that he had been waiting to meet him and was seeking help for persistent migraines. Kin Lee offered his assistance and proposed they move into the office, but before they could proceed, a voice boomed from a nearby loudspeaker. Apparently, just across from King Lee's office, the Tang Treatment Center had just opened its doors, effectively presenting him with competition. Moreover, their advertising tactics were aggressive and intrusive. Lee's elderly visitor expressed skepticism about Mr. Tang's self-proclaimed title as the best healer in the city. In response, Tang defended his reputation, mentioning a lineage of healing skills passed down by the Tan family for more than a century, and emphasizing that such practices could not be found elsewhere, subtly directing his comment toward his own clinic. The elderly man quickly approached with an expression that mixed curiosity and concern. After this, Mr. Tang informed the patient he had brought that Kinley's clinic was offering its services for sale. Naturally, Kinley felt uncomfortable upon hearing this and approached his rival, staring at him intently. Surprised, the rival claimed he was merely repeating rumors. Suddenly, the owner of the Tang Clinic appeared, recognized for his decades of experience in healing and respected in the field. Immediately, he offered his services to a man suffering from migraines, finding satisfaction in doing so. As he began his work, he removed his hat, revealing numerous abscesses and lumps on his head. The elderly healer reassured everyone, saying there was nothing to worry about as those abscesses would be eliminated and the problem resolved. Kinley observed the situation and noticed that the elderly man was reaching for the wrong tools. "Here, only a fire needle is needed," Kinley suggested with a firm and confident voice. In response, the healer dismissed Kinley's suggestion, citing his vast experience and treating him as a mere novice. As he began to treat the abscesses on the man's head, Kinley felt a growing sense of urgency within him and attempted to intervene, quickly stepping forward. However, it was already too late. The man's agonized screams echoed in the clinic as the patient collapsed. Determined to help the man, King Lee made his way through the crowd despite the healer's protests, who reprimanded him firmly, stating that patients should not be treated as mere subjects of experimentation. Despite doubts about the outcome, King Lee acted decisively, using a specialized needle and taking the calculated risk necessary at that critical moment. With precision and a steady hand, he injected the fire needle, and to everyone's astonishment, the man regained consciousness quickly. The tension in the room shifted as the elderly healer, incredulous, watched as the patient slowly sat up, dazed but alive. Kinley offered a reassuring smile and quickly assessed the man's condition. "You'll be fine now. Just take it easy," he said gently, as the audience began murmuring in amazement. The elderly healer, speechless, could only step back as Kinley's skills and quick thinking transformed the situation. Filled with pride, the elder master proposed a medical challenge to settle the matter under the terms that the first to fail would permanently lose the right to practice medicine. King Lee, unfazed, accepted the duel, exuding confidence in his imminent triumph. The news spread near the Protagonist medical center, and a crowd began to gather, drawn by the confrontation between King Lee and the renowned elder master, generating speculation about the outcome of this contest. By evening, the scene unfolded with an elderly figure seated at a table, assisted by an aide who seemed to receive gratitude for their help. They were unaware of the presence of numerous individuals around King Lee's table, many of whom expressed admiration for his expertise. However, the elder master harbored resentment, having dedicated more than 3 decades to his craft, only to be potentially overshadowed by a young newcomer. At one point, he exchanged a glance with his assistant and let out an insinuating sigh, hinting at some secret communication. Taking control, the master called the next patient. "Hello, doctor," greeted the patient as the elderly man raised his eyes and observed that the individual suffered from the same ailment he had just treated. Meanwhile, Kinley diligently attended to his patient, focused on the task at hand. The elderly master's assistant approached Kinley with her large, bulging eyes, expressing concern about dizziness and chest tightness she had been experiencing lately, seeking his advice. As she took Kinley's hand, she directed it to her chest, an intimate gesture that caught him by surprise. He quickly withdrew his hand, insisting on measuring her pulse first. Concentrated, he began his evaluation, noting her accelerated heartbeat, but no signs of damage to her internal organs. "You seem anxious," he commented, maintaining his professional demeanor. Suddenly, the crowd's attention shifted to Kinley's opponent as a man collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. Concern spread among the onlookers, realizing something was seriously wrong. They urgently began calling for a proper hospital to transfer the man, intensifying the tension. Amid the commotion, murmurs arose about seeking help from Kinley's clinic instead of relying on the Tang family's expertise. This sentiment quickly gained traction, with many in the crowd complaining that the Tangs were unreliable healers. The elderly master appeared visibly anxious. His assistant, upon hearing the crowd's doubts, feigned a severe headache before dramatically collapsing. Panic ensued, with cries for a doctor echoing through the crowd. The elderly man warned Kinley against excessive joy, pointing out another nearby patient in need of assistance. "Unless you help this girl as well, our scores will remain tied," he warned. Kinley nodded, trying to stay calm amidst the chaos. He proceeded to select the appropriate instrument, observing the girl once more and suggesting that a larger needle might be more suitable. Holding the needle, he considered examining her again, being careful not to cause harm. As he leaned closer, he was startled when the girl suddenly jumped and exclaimed in surprise, "Master Tang sent me. I'm perfectly fine," she revealed, a mischievous smile spreading across her face. In this unexpected turn of events, Kinley declared Mr. Tang the loser. However, instead of accepting defeat gracefully, Mr. Tang chose to boast about his achievements and credentials. "Do you think a simple trick can define my skills?" he retorted, pointing a finger defiantly. Unimpressed, Kinley questioned, "Would someone of your stature resort to such petty behavior, especially if you truly considered yourself a distinguished doctor? If you're as skilled as you claim, why the dramatics?" With that, Kinley turned and walked away, leaving the crowd murmuring with mixed reactions. Meanwhile, back at his clinic, Kinley encountered the young warrior he had rescued earlier. "Can I begin my duties now?" she asked, her expression blending enthusiasm and determination. "Of course," Kinley replied with a hint of concern. "But first, how are you feeling? The earlier incident must have been overwhelming." She simply smiled, reassuring him. "I'm fine, thanks to you. I'm ready to help." Her enthusiasm was contagious, and Kinley felt a wave of relief seeing her in good condition. Admiring her spirit, he knew that together they could make a real difference. "Very well," he said, nodding toward the clinic. "Let's get to work then." Just then, his phone rang. Upon answering, he was informed about inquiries regarding Mr. Heian's task related to the stones. It turned out that a large shipment of stones was scheduled to arrive in the city after the weekend, requiring the protagonist's services to locate the jade. However, there was another matter that could not be discussed over the phone. Kinley mentioned that he had accepted the meeting, and the woman on the other end assured him she would send the exact time and address. Meanwhile, at the Tang residence, a frustrated Mr. Tang reflected on his defeat from the previous day while watching the news. His irritation was palpable, worsened by the presence of a servant forced to endure his foul mood. Suddenly, a visitor arrived, much to Mr. Tang's initial annoyance. However, when the guest mentioned assisting in a revenge plan against Kinley, the landowner's interest was piqued, prompting him to open the door immediately. Before him stood the familiar face of an old acquaintance, someone who also held a grudge against Kinley. This man insisted that only he could execute the revenge plan and handed Mr. Tang a piece of paper. Unfolding it, the elder asked about its contents and, after a moment, realized it was some kind of recipe. Kinley had spent the night at his clinic. Outside, he decided to warm up by taking a walk and invited his roommate, mentioning that he had something to discuss with her. She agreed, and Kinley clarified that it wasn't a spy mission, but merely a casual visit to an apartment. He seemed interested in starting a conversation with the girl as they strolled through the city. While walking, he began asking her about her training background and whether her parents had served in the military. However, he soon learned that the girl was an orphan and had been raised in a training camp since the age of 3. Despite her difficult past, Kinley optimistically commented that her life would improve from now on. Although she appeared content, she kept her emotions under control. Suddenly, her attention shifted to a vendor displaying various items on a blanket. The seller noticed King Lee's interest and highlighted one of the daggers, which piqued Clara's curiosity. He claimed to have unearthed the ancient blade at an excavation site and assured that its value was no less than 500. Intrigued, Kinley agreed to the purchase. The woman beside him asked if the dagger had any special value, to which Kinley responded with an enigmatic smile, assuring her that its secrets would soon be revealed. With a spark from his lighter, he passed the flame over the blade, revealing its mystical nature. Astonished, the woman was captivated by the sight. Impressed, Kinley asked if she now appreciated the dagger's renewed charm. She accepted the gift with gratitude for such a thoughtful gesture. Suddenly, Kinley's phone rang again. When he answered, he heard his wife's voice on the other end, heavy with tears as she told him about her sister's kidnapping. The atmosphere shifted, a weight settling on his chest as he listened, his mind racing with worry and urgency to act. Kinley was shocked by the news and quickly informed his companion about the urgent situation at home, leaving her a card and the responsibility of handling the apartment matter herself. With fearful eyes, she looked at the card. The young woman, surprised, had never anticipated having to look for an apartment on her own. Meanwhile, Kinley hurried away, trying to gather as much information as possible from his wife during the frantic phone call. Beyond the city's outskirts lay a dark circuit where unsavory characters gathered. Among them was his wife's sister, tied up and held captive. A man grabbed her hair, speaking to her with contempt as he demanded her obedience, exploiting their past relationship while greedily eyeing her family's wealth. But the girl, tired of the exploitation, erupted in defiance, her voice full of resistance. The man felt the urge to punish her outburst, but his attention was diverted by the arrival of some men who had spotted something. a car approaching the scene. Kinley emerged from the car holding a suitcase, claiming to have brought the ransom, intriguing the thugs. The girl couldn't help but wonder why he was there, suspecting his intentions. Her captor, the ex, approached Kinley, scrutinizing him quickly. However, Kinley proposed an alternative, suggesting the men take the money and leave the vicinity, ensuring they'd never cross paths again. His attempt at intimidation failed, instead provoking laughter. The group's leader mockingly commented on the Chu family's foolishness and resolved to keep both the girl and the money. With a final taunt, the leader ordered one of his accomplices to take the suitcase and moved closer, sneering at the girl, suggesting she was nothing more than disposable. That was the last straw. In an instant, Kinley sprang into action. With a single powerful move, he sent the nearest man flying several meters away. The group's leader quickly ordered his men to attack, and chaos erupted. Fists flew, and the air filled with grunts, splashes of saliva, and sprays of blood. Amid the fight, one of the henchmen sneaked up behind Kinley, wielding a menacing club and growling, "Die!" But the blow missed. In the blink of an eye, the thug found himself face down in the dust, tasting the dirt. Panic gripped the remaining attackers, and those who could still move retreated quickly. Their leader stood frozen, unable to comprehend the sudden turn of events. Seizing the moment, Kinley moved swiftly, and with a single decisive strike, he brought down the leader, ending the confrontation. Completely defeated upon being taken down, Kinley launched a punch and the man began to beg. "Not in the face, please, not in the face." In response, Kinley unleashed a rain of blows, each one landing with precision. Watching from up close, his wife's sister couldn't believe what she was seeing. Was this the same Kinley she knew? He moved with a fierce grace, dispatching each opponent with ease, almost radiating blue flames as if he were a true warrior of light. She struggled to reconcile this formidable figure with the man she thought she knew. After the last punch, Kinley hurried over to her, quickly untying her restraints. "We have to get out of here," he insisted. They made their escape, knowing time was not on their side. As they fled, she turned to him, doubtful but determined, and mentioned an upcoming family day at her school. She extended a tentative invitation, unsure of his response, but with more confidence, she expressed her genuine desire for him to be there. Kinley smiled, finding the bright side in an otherwise terrifying day. "If I'm available, I'd love to go," he said, to which the girl laughed softly, relieved and moved by his acceptance. The next day, when Kinley arrived back at his clinic, the rescued warrior was already there, waiting patiently by the entrance. She informed him that the mission had been successfully completed and that the only thing left was to contact the sales office and formalize the transaction. Kin congratulated her on the prompt execution of the task. Then he realized it was time to share the news of their new home with his wife. Looking at the girl, he commented, "There's no reason to delay what can be done today." Shortly after, a red car sped down the road. Inside, a fierce young woman occupied the back seat while Kinley was up front, taking the opportunity to rest for a moment. His brief nap was abruptly interrupted by the shrill sound of his phone. Sleepy, he answered with a tired hello, only to receive surprising news. "Congratulations. You are the heir to the Heian family fortune," the person on the other end informed him, as if it were something ordinary. "I'm currently in Jianchen, and I've purchased 10 buildings intended for your clinics. All the paperwork is ready in your name." Kinley woke up instantly, even letting out a surprised cough. The young Mr. Heian laughed on the other end of the line, clearly amused by Kinley's surprise. "Renovations are already underway," he added. Kin was speechless. He had never anticipated such a rapid expansion of his business. Everything was happening so fast that he struggled to process it. Mr. Heian insisted they owed Kinley a great debt of gratitude, assuring him that the purchase of the buildings was the least they could do. Then he asked if Kinley had plans to visit Hangcheng, mentioning he had already found a charming villa for them. However, Kinley politely declined, explaining that he had already bought a house in the area. "Don't waste yours," he insisted. The scene transitions to Kinley and his companion arriving at the residential complex office to finalize the paperwork. Initially, the manager did not recognize Kinley as the buyer of the coveted Paratus 5. The companion introduced him as the new owner, but the manager seemed skeptical, looking at him closely, even repeating to make sure she understood correctly that this young man had acquired the most opulent villa in the area. The manager's doubt was evident, as Kinley's appearance didn't match the image she had of someone who could afford such a luxurious property. She revealed that the Zeev family had already made a huge offer for the villa and had paid in advance. However, she suggested that if Kinley could pay the full amount immediately, the villa would still be his. It was clear from her tone that she doubted he could afford such a sum. Kinley's companion began to grow furious. She had contributed to this lodging, and now hearing that the house had been sold to someone else infuriated her. Her frustration was visible, her face flushed with anger as she clenched her fists. In response, the manager began boasting about her accomplishments, with an arrogant expression that suggested she was enjoying the situation more than she should. It was evident that the manager felt confident, dismissing Kinley with a superior attitude. She didn't take him seriously, suggesting he wasn't the kind of person who could afford such a luxurious property. But Kinley dismissed her behavior as nonsense. He found the customer service noticeably better here than in his past experiences, though he was still surprised by the manager's indifference. She commented almost casually that the service was standard, implying that not everyone could afford property in that area. Her tone was condescending as she asked if he was even aware of the prices. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by another woman dressed in striking red, who introduced herself with an authoritative attitude. She confidently claimed that only distinguished and wealthy individuals resided in this exclusive complex. It turned out that this woman was the director of Caras Vela, the residential complex in question. Upon her arrival, the manager's attitude changed immediately, flattering her superior. Her voice rose in pitch, betraying her nervousness as she tried to gain favor. The woman in red stepped forward and reprimanded the manager, stating that Kinley was a cherished and esteemed guest of her family. She then turned to Kinley, expressing her deep regret for the uncomfortable situation, and admitted that she was the one who had previously contacted him about the stones. She apologized again for any inconvenience, clearly trying to smooth things over. Kinley, always composed, assured her there was no problem and that he held no grudges. The manager, realizing the drastic change in the power dynamic, changed her approach, now trying to ingratiate herself with Kinley. However, he made it clear that he didn't need flattery. His identity wasn't important. What mattered was ensuring that his house wouldn't be sold to others. After the tension dissipated, Kinley suggested that perhaps it would be more convenient to return later to finalize the paperwork. The director, eager to please, assured him there was no rush and even offered help with the villa's design, inviting him and his companion to her office. He accepted, and they headed there, leaving behind a bewildered manager. Before leaving, the director ordered her staff that the manager should no longer be involved in this matter. Later, upon arriving at his clinic, Kinley found a large crowd gathered outside. He approached, trying to understand the source of the commotion. Suddenly, a woman in the crowd pointed at him, accusing him of being the provider of harmful medication that had disfigured several people. The nearby police officers looked at him with skepticism, instantly presuming his guilt amid the clamor of outraged women, made it clear that everyone saw Kinley as responsible for their suffering. Stunned, he stood there, trying to comprehend the gravity of the accusations. A woman stepped forward, her voice shaking with anger, claiming that she and others had purchased a cream from his clinic that had severely disfigured their faces. A bewildered Kinley tried to make sense of the situation. He had produced a limited batch of cream solely for the mayor's niece and hadn't sold anything else to anyone. Yet he was surrounded by angry women urging the police to arrest him, calling him a fraud willing to do anything for profit. As the police approached with handcuffs, tensions mounted. Suddenly, The warrior girl Kinley had rescued appeared from the crowd. Calmly, she questioned the officers about their intentions. They explained that they intended to take Kinley in for questioning. At that moment, Kinley had his hands in his pockets and slowly began to pull something out. The alert officers drew their weapons, warning him not to make any sudden movements. Kinley immediately raised his hands, making it clear that he meant no harm. He just wanted to retrieve his phone to contact the person responsible for the crime. He handed the device to the officers, who asked him who that person was. On the other end of the line, a voice answered confidently. Within minutes, it became clear. The cream had been made exclusively for her and had never been shared with anyone else. Shortly after, the mayor's niece arrived on the scene. Her presence instantly silenced the crowd. She praised Kinley for the remarkable cosmetic product, displaying her radiant skin as living proof of its quality. The women who had accused him watched with obvious intrigue. The young woman reiterated that the cream was custom-made for her and had never been sold to the public. The police, now more suspicious, questioned the accusers again in a firmer tone. The pressure took its toll. One of the women, overwhelmed, confessed. She revealed that the recipe for the cream came from a member of the Tang family and that each of them had been paid 100,000 to falsely accuse Kinley's clinic of distributing the defective product. Meanwhile, at the Tang family residence, everyone was laughing and playing a board game, celebrating what they believed to be a successful plot against Kinley. They felt confident in their deception, assured of their careful manipulation. But suddenly the doorbell rang. The elderly Tang patriarch approached cautiously. Before he could react, the door burst open, knocking him to the ground. Standing on the threshold was Kinley, accompanied by the warrior, whose tail was calmly wagging. The Tang family had not anticipated such an intrusion. The old man, still on the ground, looked up in surprise to see Kinley free, not behind bars as they had expected. Kinley, always composed, sincerely expressed his concern for the damage done, which only made Tang even more suspicious. How had he escaped her trap? Realizing that his plans were falling apart, Tang pulled out a pistol and pointed it at Kinley. But before he could fire, the warrior reacted. With lethal speed, she lunged at him, striking him in the jaw and sending him slamming several feet against the wall. Her military prowess was undeniable. She neutralized the threat with surgical precision. Kinley, calm, looked at the other members of the Tang family. The youngest, nervous, asked what he planned to do. Kinley assured them that he wasn't seeking revenge, only justice. "This time," he said calmly, "you won't escape punishment." At that moment, Kinley's phone rang. It was the director of the Heian family confirming that the villa issue had been resolved. She also requested his presence at the Merlin residence that same afternoon, expressing her desire for his company. Kinley, addressing his companion, mentioned he still had unfinished business, said his goodbyes, and departed for his new destination. Later, he arrived at the Merlin residence. He passed between tables surrounded by extravagant guests until he sat opposite Mrs. Heian, who warmly welcomed him at an elegant tea party. As they settled in, she handed him a folder with finalized documents, explaining that everything had been properly processed, only the final payment remaining. During the conversation, Mrs. Heian expressed her intention to introduce him to another family member. Kinley, intrigued, accepted. Minutes later, Heian appeared. He introduced himself with a firm handshake, explaining that he was new to the city and that his arrival was intended to help boost the family's entertainment ventures. The conversation soon turned to business. Heian, impressed by Kinley's reputation, particularly his revolutionary medicinal cream that cured facial deformities, expressed great interest in collaborating. The success with the mayor's niece had caught the attention of many, and the Heian family saw enormous potential in expanding the product's reach. They wanted to partner with Kinley to produce and market the cream on a much larger scale, utilizing the full power and resources of his influential family. With Kinley at the forefront of the beauty industry, with her marketing power and distribution channels, she confidently predicted that their partnership could revolutionize the market, turning the cream into a commercial giant. As an additional benefit, She proposed that Kinley maintain leadership over the project, a role that Kinley naturally accepted. Then Heian presented the financial terms. The Heian family would manage 20% of the general business operations, while Kinley would retain 80% ownership. It was a tempting offer, full of promises and potential. However, despite the seemingly favorable terms, Kinley hesitated. The opportunity was attractive, but she knew she shouldn't rush into an agreement without careful consideration. Perceiving her reluctance, Heian, somewhat annoyed, made a discreet signal to his relative, Mrs. Heian, who resumed the conversation gently, trying to clarify any misunderstanding about the incident from the day before at the Paradise residential complex. As a gesture of goodwill, Mrs. Heian made an unexpected offer to transfer the ownership of the Injiangcheng Casino, a very successful and rapidly expanding establishment, to Kinley. The club, which was on its way to becoming the largest and most prestigious in the city, was being offered to Kinley as a gift, a gesture to honor her relationship with the Heian family. Mrs. Heian, with a sincere tone, insisted that accepting the club would not only benefit Kinley, but also solidify the relationship between their families, bringing honor to both sides. Kinley reflected on the situation, carefully weighing the new proposal. The offer was grand, but her instincts told her she had to be cautious. When she got home, Kinley felt the growing tension in the room. She humbly interrupted the accusations, expressing gratitude for the Chu family's concerns. She assured them that there had been no mistake nor secret romance, explaining that it wasn't what it seemed. "She needed medical attention. I was just trying to help," she responded. Her mother-in-law brusquely intervened. "Are you saying this is nothing? But the photographs show otherwise. What kind of man hides such things from his wife?" The photographs were spread across the table. Photos of Kinley and the woman from the military unit, which could easily be misinterpreted. Each photo seemed to increase the hostility in the room. The younger sister, furious, slammed the table, demanding to know, "Why didn't you tell us earlier? Why did we have to find out this way?" Kinley felt the intensity of their accusations, but remained calm. He was not a man easily disturbed, and he knew that responding defensively would only make things worse. "Where did those photos come from?" he asked, trying to understand how this misunderstanding had started. The pressure increased, and Kinley decided to be honest about everything. He took a deep breath and began from the beginning, explaining how the wounded young woman had come to him, how he had felt the duty to help her recover, and how she had remained under his care to ensure she fully healed. "There was nothing romantic," he clarified, looking into his wife's eyes. "I only did what I believed was right." But his words didn't seem to have the effect he expected. His wife's eyes shone with a mix of anger and pain. "You hid her presence. Do you know what that means?" she asked, her voice trembling. "How could you leave me here worried while you were with her?" "I didn't tell you everything," he said softly. "But you know me. You know what's in my heart. I would never betray you or our family. I was only trying to help someone who needed it." The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity.